Prime of strength.
What's up, everybody? Once again, this is Bill Mack here, and I am doing a list for you fans today of the wrestling world here on my channel. I am doing a top 10 WCW best, in my opinion, best tag team slash stables between the Jim Crockett, WCW, Midnight Monday Night Wars type thing. So I've kind of got a mixture of old and new here together. So I picked the top 10, and I figured I'd give it out to all you folks. If you have any kind of any suggestions, any kinds of things you want me to do, top 10 or top 5, whatever, just feel free to drop it in the comments, and I sure enough will give it out to you. But I'm trying to add a little more content to the channel, do quite a few top 10s as they're really popular. And like I said, this is based on my own opinion, as anything on the site is, whether it's a report or whatever. Give my own opinion. If you disagree, I understand it. Hey, send yours right in. We'll definitely do that. But today I'd like to give you the top 10 WCW tag team slash stables in WCW history, because I'm a big WCW guy, and that's who I like doing stuff on when I get a chance. So everybody knows WWE. WCW is just it was my favorite wrestling growing up. Watched it when I was younger. Enjoyed it. So here are my top 10. It varies. Like I said, I'm going from 10 on up to number 1. Coming in at number 10, I chose the Powers of Pain, which was the Warlord and Barbarian. Now, if you remember back in the Jim Crockett promotion, back when Jim Crockett had WCW, back in the NWA, WCW days, remember the Dungeon of Doom. I mean, there was a lot of tag teams. The Warlord and Barbarian were strong guys back then. That was an awesome and strong tag team back during those days. I chose them, and like I said, I'm going on up, but I felt like they were a good tag team to get recognition. I mean, we see so much of the tag teams today, and you forget a little bit what happened in the past, in the 80s and 90s. But I felt like this was one I felt like needed to be in there. It was a good, strong group. You had 2 members that used to be in the that were going to be in one of the other stables I have in the top 10. But number 10, I decided to go with the Powers of Pain, which consisted of the Warlord and the Barbarian, which both were very, very strong guys, very dominating guys. So number 10. Number 9 is a favorite of mine back in the old days. Number 9, I picked what they called the Superpowers then. Was Dusty Rhodes and Nikita Koloff. And remember, they were a great tag team together back in the 80s and stuff. Because you remember, Magnum TA used to tag team with them, and then he got in that motorcycle accident. Then he was no longer able really to compete. So then they got Dusty and Nikita together. They did a lot of the tag team tournaments and stuff, the Crockett Cup, all these things they tried to do together. They were an odd team. As you know, Dusty was the one that did all the talking, but Nikita, back in then, even though he was the Soviet Union, he was a heel in the beginning, but then as time went on, like I said, with Magnum TA, then with Dusty, they accomplished quite a bit as a tag team. Dusty did the talking, and, Nikita and whatnot, he didn't say a whole lot, but, I mean, he showed it in the ring, which is what you want your guys doing, and you've got one person that can do the talking and the other can be the muscle of it, then you've got it. But I felt like, you watch a lot of their old stuff. Dusty did a lot of the talking, but they were a really good tag team together. Like I said, they did a lot of the tournaments and stuff. So I picked Dusty and Nikita Koloff to come in at number 9, the Superpowers, with the number 9 in WCW stable slash tag teams. Coming up at number 8 was one I had just basically mentioned just briefly just a few minutes ago, the Dungeon of Doom, led by Kevin Sullivan. You remember the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, which was pretty strong during the 90s during that time. I mean, with the Warlord and Barbarian, all those guys were in this. All of these guys were in this stable, and they were a pretty dominant group together. They were a good heel faction that was forced to be reckoned with. During those days, they had a strong going about them and a cohesive unit. So, I chose them just because of their strength, and they lasted for a good long time. And Kevin Sullivan always had this good way of getting tag teams and groups and whatnot together. So I chose him because I thought this was a good team that he had put together, the Dungeon of Doom. So I picked them to be my number 8 choice for WCW tag teams slash stables. So I picked Dungeon of Doom. Coming up, number 7 is one that we all know and remember from the 80s and 90s and whatnot. One of them still is around and does things with WWE. It is the fabulous Freebirds coming in at number 7. Yes, the Freebirds are at 7. I know, and I may catch a lot of slack for a lot of these numbers in order, but I went in order just the most I felt like they would do. So, or that I felt like they should go. So, number 7, I have the Freebirds, and they were very colorful. They used to come in to the WCW in Atlanta, Georgia. Back when it come on to Superstation TBS, and they were in the studio. Everybody knew when Bad Street Atlanta come on, and you heard Michael P.S. Hayes, you knew that was about to go on, and this was a really good team together, It consisted of Michael P.S. Hayes and Terry Gordy and Buddy Roberts, and then in the end, near the last days, it was, remember Jimmy Jam Garvin was part of the Freebirds. So I felt like this was a really well-known, good WCW tag team to put in there. I thought they deserved to be at the top. So, yeah, they're one of the ones I picked coming in at number 7 would be the fabulous Freebirds coming in with number 7. So, moving right along here. Now, this was one of my favorite heel tag teams back in the Jim Crockett days. This was coming in at number 6. I have the Midnight Express, of course, managed by the Mouth Jimmy Cornette. Jimmy Cornette was so funny. He was a very young manager, but he was very young when he started being a manager. But I remember watching a lot of his stuff and him talking about his mama. He carried that tennis racket around. He'd talk till he was red in the face. You'd see him get involved in the matches and hit people with that tennis racket. Jimmy Cornette at that young age, even up until now, even though he does a lot of shoots, he cut good promos. I mean, he was a really natural flowing on the mic. And Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton in the beginning, they were a really good tag team. I can't remember the other dude's name that was there, and that's bad of me not to remember my own promotions team. But when Sweet Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton, which Bobby Eaton was always a part of the Midnight Express, they were a really good tag team. They always rivaled with one of my other picks that will be coming up next, which I will get into. But they won the tag titles. They were a very good, very strong, very stable tag team for WCW back during the tag teams back in the 80s and 90s was Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane, the Midnight Express. Like I said, of course, managed by Jim Cornette. Always enjoyed them. They were a good group. Watched, always feuded, and which leads me right into my number 5 pick. My 5 pick coming in the middle of the pack there in the middle. Definitely, certainly, it was one of my most favorite. If that's a word, most favorite tag teams back in the old WCW days was Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, no other. And coming at number 5, we have the Rock and Roll Express. And I used to remember those feuds they had with the Midnight Express. The double drop kick, that was, you knew when they would sling you against the ropes, hey, that was it. And they'd come out there with those armbands on and all matching. Ricky and Robert. I mean, it was so cool. I really loved watching those guys. And I didn't think of it, but you think of it now. The double drop kick was their finishing move. So I thought it was a really good thing of the Rock and Roll Express. They were a really good top team of mine. So that was one of my picks for number 5 would be the Rock and Roll Express. They wrestle on even. I think they may still even wrestle there. I'm not sure, but I know when they went to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, they used to wrestle a lot of the local regional ones as time went on. They're very old now, which, like I said, back in the 80s when they were wrestling, and then even into today. So it's like 30-some, almost 25 to 30 years they've been wrestling. So they're one of my all-time favorites. I hope that WCW, they get in there one day in their Hall of Fame because, I don't know, because it was old WCW, but that was one of the best tag teams back in the 80s. The double drop kick, that was it. They hit you with that. That's 1, 2, 3. That's it. That is the win. So coming in at number 5, I have the Rock and Roll Express coming in. Now, as we're getting each closer here, this is a tag team I'm sure you'll remember through the years, and especially just as much singles. Coming in at number 4, we have the Steiner Brothers. Yes, indeed. Old Scotty and Rick, the Steiner Brothers, the Mad Dog Gremlin, as they used to call Rick. And Scotty used to come out there, you know, and they had their University of Michigan, I think, their stuff on, and they, you know, it was so cool watching the Steiner Brothers. They were a great tag team. They were brothers in real life. So just watching the Steiner Brothers, I mean, they won so many multiple tag titles, not only in WCW but also in WWE, basically in Japan when they fought over there. I mean, they were a well recognized and decorated team. And then, you know, as time went on, they kind of went their own ways, you know. And I think Rick, which you wouldn't even recognize Rick now. I think he does like real estate work and stuff. But Scotty, you know, Scotty went up and blew up huge. I mean, really physically huge. You know, he tried out, didn't do so well. He's been in TNA, he's been in WWE. He just wasn't the same as he used to be. But then he got so muscled up, it's like he could barely even, you'd wonder how he could even walk or even move because he was so muscled up top, you know. But his runs didn't go too well in WWE when WCW was bought out. You know, they did a program with Triple H, and there's a lot of arm wrestling and posing and stuff because he really couldn't do too much. Because used to, he would amaze you. He'd do that, the Hurricane Rana, which he called it the Frankensteiner. He did it one time, excuse me. And I thought, and this was his old day, when he was more recent. And they said he was going to do the Frankensteiner, and I thought he was going to like throw him against the ropes, you know, and catch him and go across and bring him under. But no, it was like he did it up against the ring on the ropes. I'm like, oh, that's just great, you know. That poor guy's so big up top, he can't do it anymore, which he's old too on top of. But when you get that muscular up top, it's hard for you to maneuver like he used to. But they were great athletes. Both these guys were, you know, and Scott and Rick was kind of the protector, like the pit bull, you know. He'd get on there and bark at you, and he'd have that wrestling headgear thing on his head, and he'd run around the ring, hoop, 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 hoop. You know, he'd do that and run around the ring, and Scotty was always there. But I enjoyed them as a tag team. I thought they were a really good tag team and a well-decorated tag team as well. So I picked coming in number 4, I picked the Steiner Brothers. Coming up number 3 is another one from my heyday, and I know you're thinking I'm picking only the older guys and stuff, but these are just WCW. I go all the way back and forward, but you'll see why when you get as I'm getting up closer top. Number 3, I picked the Road Warriors, led by Paul Ellering, which did get into the Hall of Fame, which Paul Ellering is still managing. Even I think his daughter is wrestling. I think her name is Rachel Ellering. I saw her the other night fight Tully Blanchard's daughter, Tesla Blanchard. So, you know, it's amazing. Paul Ellering. I think they're Authors of Pain, I believe, is his new tag team they're fighting on NXT on WWE. But it's good to see Paul Ellering still in the game. He was still a mastermind behind the Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors. They were awesome. I enjoyed them. They'd come out there and, you know, and they come out there and had these big spikes on, and they were another tag team from WCW and NWA to not only excel there, but when they went to WWE, when they went to Japan, they too were a well-decorated team that's well-deserved of being in the WWE Hall of Fame, and glad they made it in. You know, Hawk, unfortunately, passed away a few years ago, but Animal still carries on the Road Warrior name, and, you know, they even tried to do that in WWE a while back, but, you know, nobody's going to beat Hawk and Animal. You can't just substitute somebody in there and expect them to be the Road Warriors 2.0. Just not going to happen. That's just a group you'll never be able to replace. So, another well-decorated team coming in number 3 is the Road Warriors. Now, coming up number 2. Now, this one I really went back and forth on between 2 and 1, but I picked longevity and knowingness over popularity at a point. Now, number 2, runner-up, number 2, is none other than what you see here, black and white, the NWO. And that NWO, that includes NWO Wolfpack, That includes NWO Hollywood. NWO set the mark. They really trend set the whole Monday Night War when they formed. I mean, you had Eric Bischoff taking the helm of WCW, taking Ted Turner's money, bringing Scott Hall, bringing Kevin Nash over to WCW to give them a shake up. Good storyline. He used the money, gave them good contracts. They came here and literally turned WCW upside down. And then the biggest surprise ever to me, no matter what nobody says, was when Bash at the Beach, when Hogan and was supposed to team with Luger and Macho Man against Hall and Nash. Hogan turned and joined NWO, became a heel. Out of all the years he had done this, he had turned into a heel. And he had always been the reigning guy for WWE for all those years in the 80s. He was on the serial. He was like the 80s and what John Cena is today. You know, I mean, he was Vince's cash cow. He was the man that made the money. Cartoons, serials, TV shows, you name it, Hogan had it. But him to turn heel was one of the biggest things nobody ever expected. But to me, that's why I argue people. I say Hogan, to me, was the greatest face of all time, and also felt like he was the greatest heel of all time. So to me, Hogan did a wonderful job in both of them. So I picked the NWO, then Hall and Nash. But then, unfortunately, they started getting watered down. They started getting everybody, and there was like 50 members of the NWO. It became watered down. They started to do the same thing over and over. They just never reinvented it. And had they kept it a smaller group, then they would have been able to do something. But since they didn't, they went ahead and basically watered it down, and then they basically stopped with the NWO. But then Vince, a few years later, with a storyline with Ric Flair, he figured he built up WWE. He was going to kill WWE. So then he brought in when Hogan and their contracts expired from Time Warner. WWE brought him in as the NWO, and they did pretty decent for a while. But it's typical. And then they had their own incarnations of the NWO, just like they did back then. Jeff Jarrett, you've had so many different. Even Shawn Michaels was in NWO. Booker T was in NWO in WWE when he wasn't in WCW. You just had so many different members. The Big Show / the Giant was the NWO on both sides. You just had so many different members, join that. But the NWO brought in also. It gave way for DX, and then the feuds there, and then culminated at WrestleMania when Sting versus Triple H, and they fought each other, which was great. But it's like 15 years too late. Nobody wants to see that anymore. They're all old, gray-haired, can't fight anymore. But NWO, to me, went number 2. And this was a heavy heart, trust me, that I picked the NWO number 2. So which leads to number one tag team / stable in WCW is, drumroll, the Four Horsemen. Woo! Ric Flair, baby. That's right. Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and don't forget, and even Barry Windham in that inclination of it. I did say I would include Ole too, because Ole was in the original, but Ole and them had some problems, and then he got kicked out of the Horsemen. Then Barry Windham basically joined it. So Four Horsemen, folks, they're still known today. You know this. Flair still gets his recognition. Even his daughter is champion. She called her little group the Four Horsewomen. Four Horsemen's known when you do this number, people know what you mean. Ric Flair's styling and profiling. You had Tully Blanchard, always the TV champion. You had Arn Anderson, the enforcer. You had Barry Windham. You had Ole Anderson when they were all there together. They just worked as a cohesive unit. They ran the 80s. They ran NWA, WCW. That's what they did. They're known through the years, even without. I'm just enjoying what they did. So to me, they're one of the well-known of anything out there. I chose them to be number 1. I know the impact that the NWO did, but just the longevity of the Four Horsemen, even today, they've tried to do it in WCW back when Mongo McMichael was there. They had, Mongo, they had Dean Malenko, they had Crippler, Crossface, Chris Benoit, had him in it. They all did their own reincarnation, but it can never take the place of. But nobody can ever substitute the Four Horsemen. That's what they were, and that's what they were all about, was longevity. Even when Flair went in TNA, tried to do Fortune the same way, and it just let you know, folks, they were awesome. I just enjoyed the Four Horsemen. They've always been one of my favorites, and they are to millions of people that appreciate wrestling over the years. Not just these newer guys, but in general, awesome guys. So that was my top 10, folks, in WCW stable slash tag teams of all time. If you have any suggestions, just drop them in the comments. Like this video. Comment on it if you want to. Please subscribe. Get others to subscribe. You like wrestling content. If you have any ideas, let me know, and I'll do the best I can and give you my output. So, for Pro Wrestling Unleashed, this here's Bill Mack with your top 10 WCW stables, tag teams. Until next time, take it easy, folks. Bill Mack, and I'm out of here.